There you go. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Okay. I'd like to introduce some of the folks here that are part of the team this workshop. We have Steve Richards here, Clemson University. Lucas Clay, he's a PhD student at Clemson. Sarah Pedigo, South Carolina Sea Grant. Rusty Grice, now Russell Grice, sorry. He's grown up. I love Rusty. And he is with Auburn University's Shellfish Lab. And Brandy Van Arnhem is here, and she trekked along with us yesterday as we were at Sebastian, and we ran up to New Smyrna Beach and got back here, and she's a trooper going along with us. I think I've covered everybody that I was supposed to. Oh, Andrew Rapicki over here. Of course, Andrew is with marine economist with Florida Sea Grant. So we're part of a team that was put together in response to doing some educational workshops that were sponsored by USDA Risk Management Agency. And we actually did the workshops in South Carolina last month, and this week we're making a tour of sites here in Florida. And some text messaging to remind you folks to come to this meeting, which obviously didn't work real well. Somebody responded, well, the biggest risk in business is not taking it. And I agree with that statement. I think that all shellfish growers are risk takers. I mean, you make countless decisions on a day-to-day basis on various levels of risk for your business and production. So how many had to decide yesterday whether you were going out at 45-mile-per-hour winds to plant your seed? There's risk there. So the intent of these workshops, I'm not going anywhere with this. And we're not going anywhere with this. Okay. Which one is what? That's. All right, so the intent of these workshops are to help growers assess how their farms are prepared to handle disasters, determine environmental, economic, and business risks, review and what crop insurance and disaster assistance programs are available to you to protect your farm, and learn what additional resources and tools are available to improve risk management. So I mentioned earlier that Risk Management Agency under USDA is sponsoring these workshops. Brandy, as you know, is with USDA, but under Farm Service Agency. So why is RMA interested in doing this? Well, some of you sat in this room in October 2021, a couple of years ago, in listening sessions being again sponsored by RMA, but it was held by representatives from AgriLogic Consulting. They developed crop insurance programs. They were contracted by RMA to develop a pilot program for shellfish aquaculture nationwide. So they came to Cedar Key, they came to Alabama, and they came to a lot of spots across the nation to develop a pilot program, which was just put into place last year. This is their first pilot year. They decided to look at cultured oysters first. As you may know, some of you may know that there was a cultured crop insurance program for a number of years under pilot status here in Florida, South Carolina, Massachusetts, and Virginia. It is now a full-fledged program in other states, not in Florida, for many reasons. It was a value loss program. It's very complicated, issues with it. The new crop insurance program that is on a pilot scale, again, it is just for oysters, not clams. It is more of an inventory or yield-based method, completely different. And I'm only bringing this up, and I know I'm talking to a room full of clam growers, not oyster growers, but it's in a pilot stage. They have intentions to look at other species, and RMA, as opposed to, I guess I can say that it's this workshop, next workshop, where we'll be at. But they are very responsive to the concerns of growers to make sure that it is a program that is going to benefit you. And they've already made changes to the existing pilot program for oysters based on growers' comments. So again, this is not going to be all about oysters, but that is one reason why RMA is wanting us to host these educational workshops. We're going to talk about clams too, but we're going to talk about risk on a very general level as it pertains to shellfish aquaculture. So just FYI. All right, to get started, again, since we took the federal money, we have to do some assessments here. We want you to sign in, but we also want you to take out your phone. For those who can, and those who can't, we'll have a paper form. Just raise your hand. You're gonna go ahead and click on that with your camera, and there will be a very short questionnaire there that you just click answer, and just raise your hand. And now it's going to give you a paper form. It's very simple. Just fill it out, pen and pen, yeah.
Thank you.
Furnace back there. Just take a minute. And sorry, we don't have anything for you that, folks that are joining us by Zoom. You're hot? Oh,
No, I'm beat.
we tried to figure out how to change the room temperature.
Oh, it's cooler on this floor than it is the second floor.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's make this very informal. You want to get up. You know where the restrooms are, out the door to your right. All right, everybody about through with that? Okay. So what is normal risk that you deal with in your business and shellfish farming? I mean, you don't expect 100% survival, so normal risk might be considered things that can occur during your production season that you feel comfortable with it, that you accept. You know, such as inclement weather yesterday, predation, fouling, other variables. And the associated mortality or crop losses or increased labor that you might have to do, or a replacement cost of gear. It's all acceptable in your business plan at a certain level. That's normal risk. There's normal risk that's applied in basically your disaster assistance programs. I kind of consider that to be your deductibles. Okay, so I guess I'm skipping around here and let's keep going. All right, so what we're going to do this afternoon is look at some risk decision-making in shellfish aquaculture. There's multiple steps. I kind of reorganized this into 3 major steps that you might want to take in deciding how you might want to manage the risk in your business.
First, that president.
The first is risk assessment, obviously. So, you know, the idea is you're going to identify each possible risk and understand the likelihood and severity of loss as it affects your business. In order to address that, we've got Rusty here, and he's going to introduce a really nifty tool. Not yet. I'm going to introduce the whole step here, Rusty. Give me a minute. A resilience index that Mississippi, Alabama, Sea Grant put together for coastal communities there in Alabama. They did it for tourism, fisheries, what other group you do?
Municipalities.
Yeah, and as well as shellfish farming. So he's gonna go over that as a tool you might want to use in assessing loss. The next step is risk tolerance in your decision making. And that's to determine what level is acceptable in your business operations. So to do that, we have a really nifty GIS mapping tool that we'll use in an exercise to look at some risk and how they apply to aquaculture use areas here in Levy and in Dixon counties. Next step, and then this is the final step, is management. So you know your risks are, how you're going to manage those risks. Well, certainly you need to be more aware of what insurance programs and options are available. For production risk management, we have obviously the disaster programs under FSA. There are pilot, as I just mentioned, pilot crop insurance programs now underway under Risk Management Agency. For marketing risk management agency also has revenue insurance programs that Steve is going to review for you, as well as review business structure and liability insurance to address legal risk and management. I think that kind of goes through the 3 steps that we'll address. Well, and of course, there's non-insurance options, in terms of management, and it's recommended that you know what to utilize various resources, tools, and other, applications, and that can be used in managing your business. So we put together a few of these tools that are current resources, and we'll just quickly review those. All of this is going to be based on my website, and you'll have the information there to look at later. All right. Now we got Rusty. And just watch your step right there. Eyeglass. I don't know, this is a weird setup here.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank y'all for coming, and as Leslie said, I'm Rusty Grice, and I work out of Mississippi and Alabama as part of the extension program at Auburn University. This tool was put together by the folks you see on the screen and funded by Mississippi, Alabama Sea Grant after a series of devastating events. Some were natural, some were, like COVID, hurricanes and things like that, as a way for folks that are in shellfish aquaculture. Originally it was oyster farming specific because we don't grow clams in the Northern Gulf. And so the way it was put together is, that's my QR code, but you've already got a copy. So the team sat down with working farmers like yourself, got feedback from them from around the country and other extension specialists, and then made a list as best they could of all of the things that are important to be able to look at your own level and say, I am going to go through this and say yes, no on these different things and decide, yeah, I'm good with this, or maybe this area I want to learn more about. And these are the different topics that were sort of came to the top as major headings. So last year I did a workshop, day-long workshops on just 4 of these individuals. So it's a lot of information, short time, and I'm always available to assist if you have questions. But yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of an example of what the workshops were like. And some of y'all could probably do business planning workshops better than myself. But so yeah, the very first one is business planning. Straightforward questions. Do you have one? Does it have the story and the narrative and all of the things? And there are links at the bottom of the document that you take to some online ones if you want to put it down on paper. It's just a good way to put it down, and it changes over time, obviously. I got a degree in college in the 80s, and this is the only thing I really remember. It was a business degree, and it still sticks with me. Businesses start and they go through a life cycle and then they end. And it took me a long time to get my head around that until I had my own businesses a couple of times. And so, yeah, you come up with an idea, you invest in it, you scale it up, and then over time, for a variety of reasons, eventually the businesses go away. And with that, particularly with farming of any type of terrestrial or other type of species, you're going to invest a lot up front and you're not going to have cash flow for a period of time, and you're certainly not going to have any profitability. In Canada, I went up there, it takes them 5 years to get a market size oyster. In Mississippi, Alabama, maybe 7 or 8 months. Of course, market size has gotten smaller and smaller that we've seen over the time in the last couple of years. This is a screenshot I took from a movie when my kids were little, and I thought it was kind of a joke, but it's from a movie called Lilo and Stitch, where some aliens land in Hawaii, and the little girl, of course, brings one of them home, and it tears up the house, and as it tears up the house, it pulls off a book and it says, "Oyster farming is for you." And I thought it was kind of a joke, but now you look back to the history of aquaculture, and they've been doing it for generations there. So that made me think back to the olden times when there used to be this place called the Blockbuster. And you go there like on a Friday night, take the kids, and every one of these little boxes had a movie in it. You're like, all right, get a movie, you go home and you pay them, I don't know, $8, $9, $10. you get to keep it for 3 days, but then you had to bring it back, turn it in, and if you didn't turn it in, they'd give you a fine, you had to rewind it. And that was a booming business. Then Netflix came along. Netflix displaced, it took, I don't know, 7, 8 years, but it very quickly made all the blockbusters go away. The point there is that businesses and are just very efficient. If there's changes in markets, market price, customer preferences, and those happen. And so that part of this index is to be able to think through some of the things that might impact your own business. This is the Kmart I worked at it when I was in college at Auburn. And this is what's standing on that same slab now, because Kmart, we have better prices. They have better logistics or transportation distribution. Amazon's partnered on them and Dollar General and others. So that's kind of what the business planning and workshop is like. Most important part are the story, the narrative of business plan, and then your budget. We get busy, we tend to lose track of your time today and the receipts and all the things that are part of your expenses in running your business. So we have tools to do basic budget, either planning or getting up to date with that. And you'll hear a lot about it today. The most important thing, as best you can, is keeping inventory or record, knowing what you have on your lease at any one time. And that's challenging because you start off with, seed, this, tiny size seed. And then as you harvest them out and sort and that kind of thing, the number changes. So budget, that's just business fundamentals, kind of like your dashboard at any one time, a monthly or even a weekly. Just a little bit of background, up in the Northern Gulf, it's off bottom. They use floating gear and they use the adjustable long line system you see on the left. Much different than clam farming, but it gives you a sense of how much of an investment can be made or is necessary to be made, and then the type of risk and exposure you have and the water like that. Seed's one of my favorite topics because we do a workshop like how many. I brought in some lima beans and some lentils and stuff and had people guess how many were in the jar, and everybody was off by 20%, either too high or too low. But we have farmers that I work with around the Gulf taking an oyster seed order for 1 million seed, and they get a little certificate that says this is your 1 million seed here. And I'm like, there are ways to very easily do subsamples and check and see that it's pretty much 1 million. We've had cases where that's 10% short or 10% over, but that's fine. It could be water dehydration, but it's good as a business person. It's a good way to, because if you think you're putting 1 million in the water and you're putting 900,000, you're losing money all year. And you think, well, we've had mortality or we've had theft or, and so that's for our farmers, that's the biggest check you write after you bought all your gear and stuff, that one-time check, or maybe twice a year when you buy seed. Marketing is very different to the two species. Some folks that I work with have never done any marketing. They just sell to the processor and they try to be as efficient as they can and sell their marketplace at a profit. We have others who have their own name, logos, t-shirts and hats and websites and all the social media stuff that try to build that brand at the restaurant level through the processors. And some have actually become processors themselves. Shellfish, oysters are grown for a premium half shell market. Ideally, there have been times where the farmers have had to sell for the shuck meat market just to get some cash flow, or they're trying to get the oysters out of their systems because it gets heavy and that makes them more susceptible to storm damage. But that's the idea. That's a place in New Orleans. These are the $2 or $3 per oyster prices that folks see and they get excited about. That's me on a boat here in Cedar Key a couple of years. That's John Gill on the water and a picture of his shop. But so the point there is marketing, or what the market price is up and down, and you're always trying to make a profit based on that number, or you're going to create a brand and a premium market for yourself. I don't have to tell anybody here about disaster preparedness. In fact, there's a long list of questions there that in your head, but it's sometimes helpful to have a checklist and go through and say, yeah, I do have electronic copies of all my licenses and all those things that I don't have to worry about getting destroyed in the storm. I showed this slide and I haven't updated it because I showed it to the folks over in the Northern Gulf. And I'm like, wow, Michael came up, it was, it was in the Yucatan area, and then just a few days later, it hit over in the Panhandle. And then we talked about Idalia, and that was in the Yucatan that Tuesday morning, and it hit out front here that Wednesday evening. So the point is, the storms are coming up, it seems like, faster and much more intense. That's part of the risk, and there's some thought that needs to go around that. And there are materials about storm prevention planning. That's a buddy of ours over in the it's in the Panacea area.
What, this one's too bad.
Yeah,
That's Canyon. Yeah.
I wasn't gonna say, but that's I went over,
Yeah.
that's the Tuesday after the storm and helped him. Those are float bags, which don't have a storm plan. You can't sink the gear. You can cut those floats off there, but anyway, they're easy to handle because he's a one-man farmer. So that's more Oyster Pacific, but this is a lesson learned from our research farm when Sally came through. That auger anchor on the left, this again is for oyster gear, but that anchor is sort of the Tractor Supply $40 anchor, which we installed. And then after those got pulled from a storm, we went back and spent $100 on the ones on the right, which are about 8 feet tall. And just the point is, as best you can, you want to build your farm and all of your upland interests as storm ready as you can when you're investing in them at the beginning. This is what it looked like when they pull anchors and everything goes up in the marsh. Those are float cages on the left. That was about 3 days after the storm, and the oysters are still alive, but it's too heavy to get all the gear back to the water. So the oysters are just up there and put back out. The one on the right, that's from Zeta. That was Deer Island. They don't in Alabama have a requirement to tag your gear, which is interesting, but because there are sometimes when the gear needs to be is found and located and not easy to find the owners. Workforce is challenging because you work in difficult conditions. It can be dangerous. It can be challenging in a variety of ways. You need a high skill set around boats and sharp objects, and that is not, it's not for everybody. It's not the kind of work that people enjoy or are really capable of. This is an example. This is a couple of our students. And one of the methods of drying oysters is you flip the cage over. And through all types of trial and error, it's been determined the easiest way to do that is swimming. Swim out there and you walk it over. It takes 2 folks in some cases. These things get really heavy. This is over in Crystal. This is where's Keller? Is she in
Oyster Bay.
Oyster Bay? So she took this picture.
Oh
This
my
was,
gosh.
yeah,
I just saw what it was.
that was just after our rainstorm like yesterday. She just rolled up on there and there's, you get to be close to nature kind of thing. So, yeah, it's not, being in the water is not for everybody. Certainly not for me. All right, so now we get into sort of the heavy duty part, and why I like working with smart scientists, because everything is so dependent on the water quality, and there are a long list of reasons. But going through this checklist, and just reading a term and saying, I understand salinity and freshwater intrusion, that, or maybe I need to learn more about how that can affect my lease or not. That also relates to open and closing of areas for harvest for a variety of reasons. So there's a long list of questions there. And again, there are experts around to help with any of the topics. This is just a map of Mobile Bay where I live. And this is to show the folks that are in my sort of beginner classes, different parts of the water bodies are classified in different ways. And there are different triggers in the counties to open and close. It could be rainfall, it could be sewage spill, it could be HABs, could be, we had one last year, the longest closure we've had in some time, because there was damage to an outfall from this wastewater treatment plant. And so they just closed the bay until they could figure out to fix the thing, which is really challenging when you're trying to run a business. So I hit the wrong button. There we go. All right. Even deeper is the Interstate Shellfish Sanitation Conference, which produces the National Shellfish Sanitation Program Guide or the model ordinance. So shellfish is highly regulated by the FDA in the industry. They get together and they review all of these. These are very strict guidelines. The 2019 version is over 500 pages. Not all of it is applicable, but these are not like suggestions. These are how the products are regulated. So it's important for food safety reasons. And I work with some folks that have been oyster farming for years that weren't even aware of this process. But there are things in there. It changes every few years and updated. Sometimes it's more rigorous, sometimes it's not, but there's a section on that. And did you even know that there are people out there that do the types jobs, and have resources that can put you in touch with folks like us, because that's what we're here for. We work closely with USDA and RMA and the state authorities and FDACs and all down the list, trying to be responsive to the industry and develop products that are helpful. Anyway, once you get done, you can go and count up all your yes, no's by section. Say, yeah, I've been through some storms. I'm pretty good in that area, but I'm not gonna do marketing, so nothing there, but I would like to learn more about the model ordinance or some such thing like that. So again, once you get through that, you can say, yeah, I'm high, low, or medium, if that is a part of the area that you want to study more or reach out or attend workshops, then that's what the index is for. And like I said, at the bottom, there's some of this is a little bit specific to our area because that's where we developed it. But a lot of these are just national links and ways to get in touch with folks as well. I always put this slide in there. This is actually a USDA part. Took that because everybody I work with in the industry around the country is very sensitive to what they do, and we just dumped out one of the baskets, and there's that oyster in the middle. It's outside of a dime, but you can see all that little fish and crabs, pea crab in there, so that we know that there are benefits for this type of aquaculture. And that's it. And I guess we'll do questions at the end.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do that. Yeah, so we can stand it. It is a nice little exercise to go through. It's 122 indicators in these different 7 categories. You go yes, no, real quick. Then you tally it up at the end, and then the score table will tell you whether you're high, low, or medium, whatever, in terms of your risk assessment of your business. So it's kind of cool. I took it, but anyway.
How do you evaluate yourself?
I'm not a big risk taker necessarily.
So you're low risk?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
But I lost just as much as we did, so there, in the storm. Okay, so I just looked at the number of clam growers in the room, and I would say we have over 200 years of experience just sitting in this room in terms of shellfish farming, clam farming. Well, not just you, but everybody, over 200 years of experience. So, I mean, I guess you would, so why do you, you already know your production and market risk, don't you? Or do you? I don't know. So just look what happened the past few years over on the west side of Cedar Key. All of a sudden the risk changed. So, sometimes you have to stop and assess these risks and what's your tolerances? Do you want to be out there planting seed in Pelican Reef today or not? What's your tolerances and what are those risks? So we decided to do a little bit of an exercise here, and Lucas is going to go through that. He set it up as on your GIS mapping, but as a way of introduction, so to do this as an exercise, we had to come up with some risks. So I made these assumptions on the risks. And some of your biggest environmental risks have to do with salinity, high or low, whether it's related to drought, excessive rainfall, hurricanes. The assumptions I made for these examples that we go ahead and go through is that you have less than 10 parts per thousand for 2 consecutive months or more during the summer months. And I define summer as May through October, and then also high salinity defined as greater than 35 parts per thousand for 2 consecutive months over that same time frame. So these are risks for both oysters and clams. I've seen clams die at 40 parts per thousand for a prolonged period. And we decided to just look at the data. Yes, sir.
Heck, we don't have heat on here.
Oh, well, we could do that. We could do temperature. This is just some examples to show you then how you can do this and assess and decide what that tolerance is over the past 10 years, past 5 years. But this is the exercise to show you how we can look at some of the existing data and how that might affect your planning. Okay, and why we took summer months, obviously, these risks are salinity extremes are less of a problem under colder water temperatures. You all know that. And of course, hurricanes, tropical storms. So to look at a marketing or economic risk, we just defined that as the annual harvesting area closures based on management plans or hurricanes, impacts, harmful algal blooms. And we did that assessment over this many individual and aquaculture use zones in all of these counties. And I highlighted the Dixie and Levy County, because this is the Big Bend area that we did this for, and we're going to report on those. And those are the water quality stations that are maintained by FDACs that are closest to these lease areas. So we gathered data from those stations.
What do those numbers on the right column mean? Like 360?
That's the station number that FDACs will go to, that Mark and Mike will go to monthly and take water samples. And I picked those stations.
There's nothing we know where it is.
Well, yeah, you can go on their website and we can talk about that in a minute
Do you
find
know
out.
what- Not to interrupt you, but do you know what it is out there, Pelican today?
It's hot.
It's not.
No, salinity.
It's hot.
I don't know what it is Pelican. I know what it is at middle of Gulf Jackson and
Okay.
the Pine. And then because we know that they're having, kind of getting off track, but we know that we're having issues over there. We have put out data loggers, conductivity data loggers that will do temperature and salinity. It's just not real time. That's a very expensive effort, but we will have the data and can provide it.
No, I'm just curious what it was today to correlate what I tested.
You can look it up on the internet.
Yeah, let's move on. And there are these long-term databases from federal and state agencies that you can use and have access to help you predict these risks and probabilities. So, obviously, Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, all of this water quality data by station, by SHA is available on their website. One click and you can look at the stations and and some of these databases for water quality, some of the SHAs go back to the 1980s. So you can see short-term, long-term trends. For the harvest data, now we did have to make the request to get that closure days. That's really not available online. Obviously, for hurricane information, you go to NOAA National Hurricane Center, go to that particular website address up there. That is a very cool thing. You can manipulate that data. You can go all the way back to the early 1900s. You can decide by category how you want to search. You can decide whether I want to look at the hurricanes that they just went over the county or within a 60-mile vicinity of my county, or there's a lot of ways to look at that. And also the other databases through FEMA. And they, of course, are the federal agency that administers declarations of counties and is used in these various disaster assistance programs. I think it's you. All right, this is Lucas. Give him a minute. He has to switch out and get up to this GIS software.
So I'm just gonna give a little overview of what this actually looks like spatially. So what we did, taking all those data points that Leslie was talking about, we were able to show spatially what some of those risks are. So we're looking at high and low salinity closures and hurricane risk. So this, we're looking at high salinity risk across the SHAs. So you can see with the points here, this is where the data actually comes from. Those are those numbers we were just talking about. So the data comes from those points, and then we aggregate that data over the 20 years to look at a mean percentile. So this is your risk of high salinity in this case. So it's a percentage, so it's not really going to be zero. We don't want to say that there's 0% risk, but it is very low over the 20-year data set. So again, these are not continuous. This is monthly data taken at different times of the day. But our idea is here, instead of looking at daily real-time data, we want to look at what are the trends over that last 20 years and help us understand what it could possibly be generally moving forward. This isn't going to capture those outliers.
Yeah, I didn't clarify that. We just decided to look at the past 20 years of data. We could have done 5 years, but we want to kind of give a historical perspective.
And just to be clear here, we wanted to classify it into low, medium, and then medium high risk. So we have 3 categories here: 0 to 6% risk, 7 to 17% chance of high salinity, and 18 to 39% chance of high salinity. So the SHAs are out here, classified as low risk on for the historical data there. If you were to scroll out into the whole state, we can kind of start to look at the different SHAs to get an idea of some of the risk. If we look all the way,
Are you in low salinity? Go to Pensacola. Yeah,
this is high salinity.
I'm sorry. Go to New Smyrna Beach, Volusia County.
That's right.
Yeah.
So over here on the East Coast, you can see high salinity risk in some of these areas. And then you can see how that correlates back to those points.
These are
there.
probabilities or percentages averaged over those 20 years.
So if we move over to low salinity risk, same type of data structure, 20-year data set. We're also looking at this, excuse me, that same water quality data points. So the data points here too, you can even start to extrapolate what is the water quality risk. In other locations, you can start to see just south of this SHA, we have some low salinity risk here. But if we were to aggregate the data within the SHA, we're looking at 0.7%, 2.5%, 6.9% in that. And then we also have, based on the way the model works for this data, we have different categories for low, medium, and high. So 0 to 2%, 3 to 7%, and 8 to 32% on that risk there.
Can you blow that up for a minute? Because I want to clear up something. Particularly the yellow. Just keep blowing it out. Yeah. 080. Okay, so you might say 2.5% for 301. Does that really reflect? Remember, we averaged this over 20 years. We've been in drought year conditions in the past decade. We are definitely in different conditions over the past 5 years or so, or more, with more rainfall up in the watershed, higher influence by the Swanee River. So we've seen changes, and you know that.
So you're saying the last 20 years kind of skews what
Well,
the actual.
that's,
value is?
yeah, we just decided, but I also have to make,
Here.
no, this. So we also use what data we have. So the water quality stations we use, yeah, can you go back? Oh, you got the water quality stations in,
Yes,
so
sir.
good. We use 360, which is south of South Gulf Jackson to Shaw. We use 361, which is at the Pie, but more inshore. And then we have a new station that was put into place, and I couldn't ask Mark today when he was out sampling. What is that third station? 461, which is would better reflect what's going on in Pelican Reef, but it's new, so we don't have long-term data on that. But we could have gone and go, what's the risk over the past 3 or 4 years, and incorporate the and be able to use that 461 station data, and then we'd have a different risk of low salinity for 3001. It's just a way to look at the data and what data is available to make that assessment.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
you did this.
I did. Yes.
When you did this, did you only look up to 20 years back, or?
That's correct. Right now, we're looking at 20
Did you ever
years.
like do a 5 and then a 10 and a 15, 20?
But we haven't yet. That's something we totally could do. And we're gonna think about maybe building it into a way that we could look at what is the risk profile that you're interested in? Do you want to look at 5 years back? Do you want to look at 20 years? Do you want to look at 40 years?
So I think for us.
Yep.
I think the last 5 years has been a huge change.
Totally agree. I think there's
And
definitely.
I think with what you're showing us right there,
Mhm.
it makes the science look really good, but I don't think that's realistic.
No, it's totally understandable. I think with
That's
changes
a 20-year
that are-
profile.
That's what I'm saying.
Look at that, let's look at, that's how you can use this data and this tool.
No, I
But it's-
agree.
But it's very data limited in that, we have these certain stations and that's it. But we can look at other, we have, it's what other databases are out there.
I'm not bashing it, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
no, I know
think we-
you, no, I know that.
I think-
I would know if you're passionate.
What are they checking at all these points? Salinity, temperature,
Yes,
pH?
yeah, no, it's temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, both surface and bottom. That's what, they're out there monthly. You don't see Mark and Mike out there all the time? Yeah, so, yeah.
Well, on Joey's point, if
Yeah.
you broke it down into 5-year blocks,
Yeah,
that would be pretty helpful.
I think it'd be scary.
Yeah, it'd be helpful.
well, risk can be scary.
None of this know the trend.
No, I know.
Where we're going.
That would be definitely somewhat beneficial if there was some blocks of years, so you could know what trends were and where we're trending or potentially trending.
Well, you can see the way the farmers are going, they're all trending to one spot.
But the other database that I think would be interesting to understand this is then to take your gauge data, let's say in the Swanee River, like at Wilcox, where it's not highly influenced, and look at that data over time too, and see how that's fluctuated. I mean, the Swanee always crests every spring. The question is, what kind of crest is it? And, when we started clam farming in the 1990s, that was a drought decade. Okay, no doubt. So how is climate changing some of these parameters as well? So that was, I'm sorry, that's low salinity. So you go to Pensacola Bay, for example, and see what they, and of course, Pensacola Bay is oyster growers, clam growers there. For many reasons, well, you can see mine.
Yep, so they're the highest risk profile.
One more
that we have
question.
in this data set.
Sorry. Are these assessment risks on oysters or clams or
Both,
it's,
combined. So the assumptions we made on the salinity examples, would be riskful for both bivalves.
so, but that's not two of the same, so it's kind of like a leveled out thing, I guess. Look,
Well, in this case, we're looking at
Well,
a hard salinity.
oh,
So we're looking at either below 10 or above 35.
Yeah.
So that's where the risk, what triggers risk, if you will. If you're between that, then it's throwing that data out.
I mean, we could have gone 15, but, anything like, and then that would have been, not as problematic for oyster growers, still would have some risk associated with clams.
So beyond salinity, we looked at hurricanes and closures as well. So the hurricanes, we have that NHC tool that is really beneficial if you want to hone in on a specific hurricane and kind of look at those trends over, 2, 3, 5 years. But in terms of declarations, we just wanted to start to look at what are the FEMA declarations that would trigger some of these insurance programs we're going to talk about today. And over the last 20 years, we're looking at 17 declarations within Lee County, and then across the state, your average is around 15.3 declarations. So moral of the story there, hurricanes are a threat, as you know, and just wanted to put that spatially so you can kind of see what's going on there. But we're looking at building that out some more. From a closure perspective, we've also got, this is the percent per year of closures by SHA, and this again is over 20 years. So we're looking at 5, 8, and 11% of the year these SHAs are closed. And then those are all correlated back to.
Can you just blow that up again?
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, you've got two now SHAs, basically. for Levy County for Cedar Key and, so, and now 301 is approved. It's not even conditionally approved. It's approved and only closed on what? HABs, red ties, and emergency closures. But even though it's approved versus conditionally approved at Dog Island, which has 5%, you know that those half closures over those past 20 years has resulted in overall annual average of 8%, which is higher than Dog Island.
And we've done this for the whole state as well. You can start to see that there are Tampa Bay
Are they ever open?
almost closed almost half the year.
Yeah.
There's your risk. Can you tolerate that risk?
They don't.
So any questions about any of those data sets, anything we want to see again? Really good insight. I think we'll take a look at that stuff for the 5 years. Really good insight about the 5 years. I think that's important.
So
So
that would, you know.
Yeah.
Separate those as claims would be helpful if you could too, because
Well, the only reason to separate it is to separate it by those factors, biological processes and factors that would separate them. So do you want to know? You know, on those example definitions, those are risks to both biomes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but we can narrow it down. Yeah, I mean, this was an example to how useful this data is and how you may want to use it. But thanks to Lucas, who's applied this on a GIS approach, it's very cool to look at. But it also could be a useful tool, like you said, let's look long term at maybe what's going on the west side of Cedar Key.
if you have a million seed, where you want to put them this year.
Well, yeah. So, we did 2 screenshots of this, and that's what you're seeing in that handout there. Because again, to get to this now, you have to have the software available to that. So we did some screenshots just for the heck of it. And then we did an overall table summary of those risk percentages for each of the areas that we looked at. And that's in a table format, the handout in the back. All right, thank you, Lucas. Okay, Steve is going to review the various programs that are available to you. And as part of that review, he's going to refer to this handout here, which we spent quite a bit of time with RMA and FSA to confirm. And even now, the minute you put down in print, it's already outdated. But there's one change that Randy brought our attention, but it's kind of a nice kind of quick comparison if you're shopping for programs. Of course, I already told Steve that this crowd probably could teach the workshop on ELAP and that. Right?
That's good news.
That's a good way to start off. Sorry, Steve.
And I apologize that there will be a lot of oyster items in here too, but for the folks that might watch the recording and ought to go over it. So we'll look at the crop insurance programs that are available, as well as the FSA programs that you already know about. But basically, just for those maybe listening, FSA is NAP and ELAP. Programs we're going to go over today, like the Hurricane Wind Index, the oyster, shellfish aquaculture policy, used to have the clam dollar plan, or when it was pilot. Those are all RMA programs. So that's the risk management agency. And to actually find out more about those, you would contact a crop insurance agent. And there is an agent locator on the website, got the website here. And of course, if you have FSA questions about NAP or ELAP, call your county office, but we also have Randy in the back that could also answer. And both disaster and crop insurance offer some risk protection. And just to give a terminology, catastrophic level is, or CAT, it's on your handouts, is basically usually half the yield at 55% of the price. And there's usually a buy-up provision with crop insurance policies through RMA. Also, there's buy-up provisions through NAP. They operate pretty much the same way. You can buy up, and usually it's 5%. So narrowing it down, I know everybody in the room is clams, but let's say there's a mixed audience, but what do you grow? Clams. Clam dollar policy is not available in Florida. So pretty much you're looking at NAP as a possible thing, ELAP, of course. But there might be a possibility that there's two revenue programs I'll go over briefly, whole farm revenue protection and micro farm, that might be something to look at. Again, this is kind of a brief overview. When we used to do this, we do an hour on each policy and everybody was basically passed out at the end, tired. So we're not gonna do that. So just to go through these things, in the handout, we try to actually spell it all out too, so you can look at that. Oysters, we've got the Shellfish Aquaculture Pilot Program. That's only in Franklin and McCullough counties. So the oysters, if they were grown nearby here, they would not have that option anyway. And I'll go over the Hurricane Wind Index, because that actually stacks on top of the Shellfish Aquaculture Program. And that's a really great new policy, and I think it's kind of a game changer. I think if the Clam Dollar Program or pilot program was still here and they had the Hurricane Wind Index, I think we might have had some takers. The next thing that kind of narrows the field down on what you can choose from is how many years you've been operating. Shellfish Aquaculture Pilot Program, you have to have 4 years, and there's no what they call transition yield or anything you can do if you're less than 4 years in business. NAP doesn't have any growing history required, although if you want to buy up, you should have 1 year growing history. Whole farm revenue, and these are the two revenue programs. You have to have 5 years of tax records, micro farm 3. And I'll go through these each a little bit more in detail. Sometimes you have to choose between the two. So right now, the Shellfish Aquaculture is a pilot program. You could actually do Shellfish Aquaculture and NAP. But if the Shellfish Aquaculture Pilot Program ceases to be a pilot program, NAP goes away as an option for you, and you'd have to purchase Shellfish Aquaculture if you're in Franklin, McCullough, or wherever it is. Like in South Carolina, we have the Clam Dollar Plan in all coastal counties, so you cannot buy NAP for clams.
Can you sign up for ELAP?
ELAP, you can sign up no matter what you choose. So ELAP, I would just recommend that you always have that in your back pocket, always keep up to date on that. That is a pure disaster program. It's really not insurance, but just for folks out there that might not have even heard of it. And in fact, to be honest, in South Carolina, and Sarah's in the room here, we were talking at lunch, I'm not sure we've ever had an option for people actually to claim. So that's kind of interesting. So they didn't actually even know about ELAP, that they applied for that. Finally, you look at the policies and what does it cost, what kind of causes of loss does it cover? You know, you want to cover those things that Lucas talked about and that Leslie talked about, salinity risk, temperature risk. Those usually are covered. And then finally, what's the paperwork burden for you, right? It's not just costs, it's the paperwork too.
Did you say salinity's covered?
Yes, in these programs, yes, it is.
For
High
ELAP?
and low. And I'll go over that here too.
Really?
But it's, unfortunately, it's the oyster product that I'm talking about too. So
Okay, do you know the clam product?
Clam Dollar Plan?
No,
ELAP.
no, for ELAP.
He's asking about ELAP. Steve.
For ELAP,
Right.
salinity in itself is not an eligible cause of loss, but
Well, that's
whatever
why.
causes,
Okay,
whatever causes the fluctuation in salinity,
yes.
it can be eligible.
We had that same question in South Carolina. So you have to, and these weather stations would help, you know,
Right.
what weather event caused the salinity change. So actually, even in these policies, it's kind of the same. It's like, if you read it, and I'll read it here in a minute, you know, heavy rainfall causing low salinity, right? So you want to tie it to that weather event. I would say no matter what product you choose, it's good to have those records. Gonna go over this briefly. Well, maybe I'll go over this a little bit more in depth for those that are listening online that may grow oysters. But like I said, 4 years of growing. The one thing that was a big misconception at first, I put it here and made it clear, it must be grown in container because a lot of people said they were not eligible to do bottom culture. And there was an FAQ on the website. And really, when you looked into more, it was like bottom containerized oyster culture was covered, but we told a lot of folks they weren't, and that's kind of a shame, but we've got that cleared up this year. Whoops. You can choose different coverage levels, like I mentioned before. Here are the things that it covers. So named storms, hurricanes, nor'easters, don't get many of those down here. excessive heat during low tide event, freeze during low tide event, low salinity due to excessive rainfall. So even there, they're putting it back on a weather event, right?
Yeah,
Production loss must occur, so this is something else too. The name peril must happen in the same county as the producer, so that's something to think about, so, I would think a FEMA declaration would probably cover that. And the hurricane wind index is a little different, the hurricane actually has to make a landfall in your county or the county next door to it. And that's the next slide. The paperwork right now, as far as we could dig up, and we'll get confirmation from RMA tomorrow, we pretty much do a beginning inventory and what you harvested, and you have to have seed receipts. There's not a monthly inventory yet. See some closing dates here. With everything, I always like to stress this because must report like the event that could have caused a loss. Even if you didn't cause a loss, report that it may have caused a loss within 72 hours. So if you have the high rainfall event, you have that drop in salinity or something like that, get on the horn and say, hey, this might be a problem here. What we've gone to now, the cell phone's pretty nice. You take a picture, if there's a picture that to be had, or you text the crop insurance agent, in this case, so you have records that you actually made that notification. Because you don't want to be stuck like, you didn't tell me, so you're not covered. This is kind of the game changer one, and this is one that we see people that buy the plan policy up in South Carolina. They buy it solely to get the stacking option, to get the hurricane coverage on top of it, because you have to have that underlying policy. So in this case, in Florida, you could be the shellfish aquaculture, it's oysters, have that underlying policy, and then you can stack this on top. So the requirements are the same as the underlying policy. But what the neat thing is, and I have a slide that'll have an example, it basically covers the difference between the coverage level you choose and 95%. So it doesn't take you all the way to 100, but it closes that gap. So if you chose catastrophic coverage at 50%, this is gonna have 45% coverage. So that's 45% coverage of your average production history, pH. And what it is it's an indemnity plan. So if that storm hits in your county or the county next to it, you get that with that 45% of that yield. Just as a check, it's like automatic. You don't even have to prove it. You know, they know that NOAA said that the hurricane made landfall. It's automatic from your standpoint. You don't have to fill out any forms or anything like that. So it's a pretty decent protection. The other thing too is tropical storm. It protects against those, and I'll have another slide that tells you, I think it's the next slide. You have to have sustained winds of 39 miles an hour and greater or equal to 6 inches of rain over a 4-day period. It doesn't have to happen one day, but over 4 days, you get over 6 inches of rain. That triggers tropical storm. That's half the hurricane coverage. Well, how you think these are additives, you actually could collect twice on this. Downside is, we'll talk about the revenue policies in a bit. You can't stack this on top of those. So that's unfortunate, but a revenue loss caused by a hurricane would be an indemnity for those policies as well. Let's see, the one I wanted to, I'm gonna go ahead here. Somehow I got deleted. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my example on the tropical storm coverage. It's half of the hurricane coverage. So in this instance, it was 45%, it'd be 22.5. But if 2 tropical storms or a tropical storm and a hurricane, you can get that full 45%. So it's additive, but you can't get more than that. So it's
45% to the max.
45%. Well, in this instance, 45% would be the max.
then this is not oysters.
Yeah, but you know what'd be nice is like, say the clam policy comes back in some form, maybe a better form than before. This might be a reason to consider it, you know, in the future. And you never know how these things will happen. Revenue protection policies have been around for a while. This one's changed a lot. 20 years ago, it was called AGR and AGR Light. They've been constantly trying to improve this one. But basically, you're insuring gross revenue. So whole farm revenue protection is gross revenue that you're insuring. It's based on tax records that your gross revenue. So that's one thing that you have to consider. It's not just taxes, but it's when you file them is when you would get the indemnity. So if you're a on-time filer, April 15th, your loss could have occurred quite a ways from that, right? April 15th of next year. But if you're a delayed filer, to October 15th, it might be a long time. So it's something to consider. The other thing to consider is the revenue loss. So you're insuring your gross revenue, 50% up to 85% would be how much you could insure. But it also is due to an unavoidable natural cause. So uninsurable causes of loss includes those items not caused by a natural event. So ideally, like if you insured all your revenue to insure it against all the risk, if your wholesaler dumped you or the wholesaler goes out of business, you would be covered. But in this case, that's not a natural event. So it's only natural events. So it's pretty much those things that we talked about. But if you're thinking about just indemnity, it could be a hurricane. So in a way, this could give you some hurricane protection.
Is this available to us here right now?
It is, it's available.
Oh, for oysters?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
clams. This is any product, any county, pretty much. I don't think there's anybody excluded
Oh, really?
from whole farm revenue. Yeah. And definitely give your crop insurance agent a call. I think what's nice about these products is Florida has many farms that have a lot of different products that aren't under crop insurance. We call them specialty crops like produce and fruit. Those agents would be really familiar with these programs. So you could definitely get some answers by talking to them. Now, this one is much more simplified. It's the same kind of thing as whole farm revenue, but it's called micro farm. It's got a cap of $350,000 the first year you buy the revenue that you can insure, or $400,000 after that. So I'm not sure what gross revenue levels we're at in this room, but that a lot of folks that I deal with come underneath that cap. You only need 3 years of that Schedule F. Some of you might file Schedule C, you have to look at your taxes, but you can also make a modified Schedule F. Not an issue. Same thing, insure up to 85%, 5% increments. Again, same insurable causes of loss, has to be a natural event. And really, that's basically the same, except the one before here, I didn't mention this, the subsidies, the premium, if you have 2 or more commodities. So I'm pretty much sure everybody in the room knows just one commodity, right? So getting that subsidy down on whole farm revenue is difficult. Not as hard to get a premium subsidy on the micro farm. So if you're under that 400,000, 350 cap, interested, maybe you talk to the crop insurance agent about micro farm. And that's the other thing too. I mean, there's nothing preventing you from signing up for ELAP and having crop insurance. Likewise, there's nothing preventing you from signing up for ELAP and also signing up for NAPs, right? So one good thing could be that your indemnity is paid quicker, although I don't know tax returns, all that, how that timing would work. But sometimes how fast you get paid is really important, right? Finally, FSA programs, I can probably just hand this remote to anybody in the room and you could all talk about it, but I'll just go over it really quick. Now, it's the same whether you grow clams or oysters. We have the forms listed here. There is a cap of $900,000 of income. You do have a cap level of 50% of production and 55% of the price for NAP. You can buy up all the way up to 100% of price at 65% of the yield. Again, you probably know the reasons what insurable causes of loss are. And this is kind of interesting too. I mean, these look pretty darn similar to the RMA cost of loss. And I think that's why if a policy is offered, NAP goes away. The game changer for this, especially buy up, I know many, I don't know how many sign up for just the cap level of NAP, is you've got some premium subsidies currently that can actually waive the administrative fee and also take half off your buy up premiums. And that's these beginning, limited resource, social disadvantage, or veteran farmers. I know a lot of folks fit in this, hasn't been farming for more than 10 years, not in this room, especially when Leslie said you've got 100 years of experience in here. But here, you might have people that, you have less than $177,000 in revenue for the past 3 years or 2 years. Females, farmers that are own the farm would also be qualified, veteran farmers. So might be something to think about if you find in one of those categories. Again, admin fee is waived and 50% off buyout premiums. ELAP, it's just a pure disaster program. There's no reason not to sign up for it, especially if there's a catastrophic loss like happened. I think everybody in the room probably after Idalia signed up for the ELAP, reported their loss. And that basically is just a percent of the loss, what's covered. So 75% of losses for most of us, 95%, 90% for those different categories that I mentioned, so. I know yesterday, this said 30 days after the loss is apparent, you have to report. It's not necessarily mandatory, but it's good if you do it. Let's put it that way. There is this new tool here. It's an online decision tool. You go to this website, and it just helps you get the documentation together for what you would need if you were to apply for ELAP. It's not the application itself, but I think it would help you. I think Brandy said it yesterday, those people that come with their records all together tend to get paid quicker. So that's going back to the payment thing, having the records in order, right? That's also a good thing. You can mix, match, and combine all these things like Leslie or somebody mentioned, ELAP, let's just do it. If Shellfish aquaculture is available, you can participate at all different levels. If that's not, like in this room, NAP operates like crop insurance. You can just do that basic level, but also can buy up. And if you are eligible for Shellfish aquaculture, you can stack that hurricane wind index. Now, the revenue policies are also available. Those are available in any county, any product. So you don't have to worry about that. But you cannot stack that hurricane wind index on them. And that's pretty much it for the choices. And again, you've got that handout in front of you with all those different things. And then Leslie's going to put the presentation, recording, handouts, everything online. That agent locator would probably be a good thing too. That's on the Army website, but we'll make sure we have that obvious so we can find somebody to ask some more details. Thanks.
Thank you.
What are you gonna do for us?
Brandy's your county director for Farm Service Agency. Do you want to say anything about any of this?
My only thing to add is to inventory as you all know, inventory records is the most important thing. As long as you keep your inventory records up, if you have NAP insurance, you're required to turn in inventory records every month. ELAP at this time does not require monthly records, but you are required to keep inventory records. But like he said, as long as you keep up your records, the ones that turn them in monthly and everything's turned in ahead of time, those are the ones that get paid the quickest. Those are easiest for us to process and they get paid the quickest because everything's right there for us. We don't have to come back to you constantly asking for you to clarify stuff and asking for you to turn in more stuff or things don't match. The ones that turn it in monthly generally are the easiest ones to deal with and because they keep up with their stuff. So everything's pretty clear. We are fixing to get a new farm bill. Just keep that in mind. I don't know if it'll be retroactive back to, most likely it'll start 2025. But all of your payment limitations and things like that are subject to change. The 900,000 adjusted gross income rule, I've been told is definitely going up. And some of the payment limitations on the programs are also going up too. I want to add real quick, Joey, I'll tell you under the bus, but you called this morning asking about ERP
No, I called yesterday.
over yesterday.
Yeah, it's because I read it and I just saw.
So ERP, everyone, aquaculture is eligible for ERP.
If you got ELAP, then you cannot also get ERP. And the reason for that is ELAP doesn't have a minimum loss threshold. So when you get paid out on ELAP, you're getting your maximum dollar for your crops. You're getting the whole thing, what your crop is worth. ERP is paying out on people that if you received a NAP payment or an indemnity payment, or you didn't file at all, then if you did receive a NAP payment, then your NAP payment is being deducted from that ELAP, from that ERP payment, because you're only getting a percentage of your NAP payment. So it's paying you the rest of it. Where ELAP, you already received the whole payment,
Right.
your whole value of your crop.
No, I was calling for somebody else for 22.
Right, it's the same thing.
And so I can tell that they did not receive a
Then
payment.
they are eligible. If they did not receive an ELAP payment, then they can apply for ERP. And as of
So
right
it's
now, they have.
inclusive. If you had both NAP and ELAP, but you got paid on ELAP, then you're not eligible.
Right.
Okay, that's cool.
Now, how about if I have one farmer that came to me and he was out of the country and he missed the turn-in time
For ERP?
for ELAP.
Deadline.
But can he file ERP for 23?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There may be.
No, I didn't know what he could do.
He can file it for 22,
Right,
but right now ERP is ERP 22.
right. I didn't know if there was ERP for 23 because,
Maybe, but not right now.
okay, cool.
Well, since you brought up crop year 23, you want to just give us a status of
So ELAP
and
is
ELAP.
And who's writing the checks?
all ELAP in my counties, now,
That's all I was asking.
in
Yeah,
my
yeah.
counties, all 22 and 23 ELAP have been paid, except for some that have reasons why they haven't been paid, and there's only 2 of them. Everything else has been paid. We're currently processing NAP payments, because we try to get ELAP out of the way first, because it's pays the most. So we are now, and some of your NAP payments you should be seeing in the mail, or in your bank accounts probably this week. Because we've issued some of them from the last meeting. We have a lot of them, and along with lots of watermelons too. It's crazy right now, but
Can I have
but
my,
we are trying to get it all processed.
can I have my percentages for this year, or is that, am I committed now to what? In my NAP, like my percentage, should I bring that up?
If you have some individual questions about your claim, I don't think this is the right place for
Okay.
it. So maybe you can talk to Brandy afterwards or go to her office. I just wanted her to give a general report, and I think, thank you, Brandy, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
All right,
have
let's move
paid
on,
out
so we don't spend the night here.
close to $20 million this year, and ELAP alone with Cedar Key. Yeah, 2023.
Well, I'll tell you, that's great work, Brandy.
Thank you.
Yeah, very much.
Good, so
It-
thank you
Yeah,
for everything you guys
it's
did.
a very good, hardworking office, yeah. Okay, going on. Wanted to just highlight some resources and tools that may be available to assist you. The whole thing about risk management is to reduce your cost of risk, right? So what I was able to do was to look at what, for the southern states and Gulf of Mexico states, what tools might be out there to assist you in some business management. And since oyster aquaculture is the newest aquaculture sector nationwide, there is information available, but you clam growers, you're old hat, so, I am gonna briefly just say what's available, because really all of this is now posted at that website address, and the folks that are online from Zoom, and plus this, workshop will be videotaped, they can go direct to that and get the information and actually, utilize that information. In fact, this is a list of current resources that we've been able to pull together. Note what's in development. Some of you were at the workshop hosted by Nicole Kershoff in March earlier this year. And part of the outcome of her project and Tom McCruden's project is to develop some enterprise budgets specifically for clam farms. So we look forward to that. This is just an extension fact sheet that discusses what we just did with Clay. With Lucas, looking at the environmental economic risk associated again with oyster farming, particularly in counties on the Florida West Coast, and applying that to a hypothetical farm, the financial characteristics. And then how that plays out in probabilities over a 5-year net income. So that was just a discussion in the paper about risk and how you assess for risk. Then we actually took that and applied it in a calculator where a farmer can put in their own specific inputs. And then those risks are applied and projected again over 5 years, and those are the risks, almost similar to what the exercise we just did. South Carolina Sea Grant has some really interesting business planning tools specific to oyster farming, and they're available on their website. You can do business planning and income statements, et cetera. Rusty Grice with Auburn University has also put together a pretty basic budget calculator, really good for new growers, but it's limited to gear type with flooding cages. A really cool tool here, estimating farm size and gear costs for oyster culture, and it's based on the various gear suppliers' instructions and how to apply them, as well as their prices. Again, not for clams, so. With colleagues from different Sea Grant programs in the whole Gulf of Mexico, I put together, this is after Hurricane Michael, a planning guide for off-bottom oyster farms in the Gulf of Mexico. This introductory planning guide, you could take a look at it because it gives you guidance on how to develop, prepare, and implement your own hurricane plan for whether it's a oyster farm or a clam farm. Recommended equipment and supplies, not specific to a bivalve, and as well as recovery steps after the storm. But then we did take it a step further, and then actually for each gear type that is used in the Gulf of Mexico, floating bag, floating cage, adjustable long lines, then we gave specific instructions, installation instructions for heavy weather, what to do before the hurricane season, during the hurricane season, recovery steps for those different gear types. We also did it for land-based operations for nurseries and processing plants, so that might have application here as well for clam growers as well as work boats. And Andrew, this was a very nifty, now we can say something about clams. So this was a very easy, practical, Excel-based tool. Come on up, Andrew. Developed several years ago, and then we brushed it off, Andrew brushed it off, and it's pretty cool, very easy, you can use it. Might have some application.
Yeah, so hi, everybody, I'm Andrew Opicki. Leslie already mentioned, but I'm a assistant professor in food and resource economics at UF and an extension economist with Florida Sea Grant and IFAS. We had Leslie and Chuck Adams and an undergrad a few years ago put this together. And it's a budgeting tool where you go through it, you enter some data, and then it kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at in terms of profitability, things like that. And what we did was we kind of retooled it, retweaked it a little, and just re-released it with the idea of hopefully, existing clam farmers can go ahead and use it. So the way it works is you have a startup page, an introduction, this kind of blue thing here. You go through you read through the instructions, say click here to begin. It takes you to another page where you enter a little bit of information about like your boat, your motor, your truck, and then it takes you to a budget page. And really, that's kind of what you're seeing. Sorry.
You got it?
Yeah, right here, the production item, the assumptions, and investment and capital asset requirements. So anywhere you see this kind of orange shaded cell, you can go in there and change that number. It starts with 1 million seed planted per year. You can change that however you want, 2 million, 3 million, whatever. You give it seed density, clams per bag for both nursery and grow out, survival rates, and then how you expect the harvest size distribution to be between the 1-inchers and pastas and everything. And then some price numbers along with some of your capital costs, how much bags cost, how long you expect them to last. And once you enter all that, it will give you a couple things. On that budget page, it'll give you kind of a snapshot of what you entered, exactly what it would look like under the assumptions in the model. And then it will also give you kind of a 5-year annual cash flows, kind of showing you, you know, how your position is going to change through time with those assumptions. And then it's got a couple other pages called sensitivity analyses, where what it's going to do is show you, it takes that basic baseline, your assumptions, you know, what you expected your survival to be. And then it says, okay, what if we tweak that survival? What if we go up and down from what you said? And then it's going to give you all of these things, you know, how many clams you're going to harvest, total return, total cash costs. It's going to update those for you and give you a little more information. So hopefully this is useful. If you get a chance and look at it and see something that doesn't work for you, please feel free to reach out. You know, we want this to kind of be a living document. You know, it's only valuable if it works for growers. So, you know, if there's something in there that's not working for you, you know, let us know and we can change it. All right, so moving on to inventory and record keeping for shellfish farms. So, you know, it's kind of been one of the big points today is this is one of the most important things you can do. It goes beyond just, you know, meeting the requirements for NAP and stuff like that. Knowing what you have, what's currently on your farm is valuable. You know, it's just good business practice. How many shellfish do you have? What size are they? Where are they? When you have, when you keep records on that, when you keep that basic information, it allows you to do a lot of extra things. You know, you can go in and kind of play detective after the fact and try and figure out, well, this batch did well and this one didn't. Maybe why did that occur? And those better record will allow you to do that. It also lets you look at kind of what's the value of what you have on your lease site right now. You can kind of take a snapshot at a point in time of the value of your crop. It's just, generally speaking, the better your record keeping, the easier it is to manage your business. Traditional methods used for record keeping. Leslie put this slide together and memory just strikes me because maybe it's because I'm absent-minded. That's amazing that anyone can do that. I would not remember anything. I wouldn't recommend that. It's, you know, always write it down, always keep records. You can see an example, a whiteboard, looks pretty impressive there. Lots of information is recorded. You know, you can use notebooks, color-coded tags. We're actually going to talk, you can use computers. We have a Microsoft Excel reporting tools, a couple of them that I'm going to discuss in a second that Leslie and I have developed in one case and are developing in another case. So these clam farm inventory sheets have been on the IFAS Shellfish website that Leslie runs for a few years now. And they were developed to meet the USDA Farm Service Agency's NAP requirements for crop reporting. And basically what they are is it's an Excel-based tool. You go into Microsoft Excel, you open this up, and it's got a September starting point. So kind of what you do is you're going to enter in how many nursery bags you have at the end of September, when you planted them, how many you have at each plant, how you stocked them, what the density was. You're going to do the same thing for your grow out bags, and that's going to create a snapshot at the beginning of the program. And what this tool does, kind of the nice thing about it, is it rolls over. It does some of the work for you as you go month to month. So you enter in that first snapshot, and you get, it'll flow into the October report. You'll get your inventory from September. So that's what you have on October 1st. And then using this tool, all you have to do is keep track of how you move stuff during that month. So any new plants you have in October, you enter the plant date. number of bags, clams per bag. Anything in green, you enter, and then it's gonna calculate, it's gonna tell you how many clams you've got there.
Question for you, sir.
Yes,
How do you change the parameters on that? Because I think it goes by, 1,200 to a bag, and a lot of people don't even do that.
that would be the last thing I think you're thinking of. In here, it should be able to, change. You just enter how many.
No, it won't. It drives me crazy.
Oh, really?
That's why I quit using it.
Oh, okay, well,
Try it again. Try the one for upcoming September.
now,
Okay.
That, they glitch. Excel will glitch and we've made corrections and maybe give it another shot because I do use it just to go through the paint, just so I know your paint. I do it. And by the way, I never can get it done by the end of the month. It's always,
That's why I started
I
doing,
know.
I went and did my own thing and
and
got
it's
them to
fine.
approve it.
And
No,
it's
I'd
fine.
love to
Yeah.
use this.
Yeah.
It's just,
There
That's the
might have
reason I
been
quit
some
using
glitches. Yeah, there might have been, and that is the problem with anything you're doing like that.
and with the nursery, when you do site nursery, everybody sacks the nursery at a different count.
You're supposed, those green cells are for you to enter. We're not-
Right.
yeah,
we're not-
something went
we're
wrong
not
there,
telling
because
you what
it's
to
supposed to be you enter in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you enter the green cells and then, but the thing is, when it adds up, it changes, it's like it overrode me and changed it back to either 12,000 or 1,200, and that's not what I do.
Right,
Well,
well,
I
yeah,
wish you just said something, because then I go to him and I said, can you just?
Yeah, fix it.
yeah, so, and I'll get to that in a second, I got a slide for you, but yeah, so you enter in your nursery plant, hopefully it works, but then it gives that number. Then any switches, transfers from nursery to grow out, you've got a transfer plant date. You monitor which nursery plant date you're switching, number of bags transferred, all this stuff. It doesn't show on here because, we ran out of space, and then there's a third thing here where you do harvest, so it's gonna pull those clams out that you've harvested. And if you enter in all your all the activity you did, it should update for what you have at the end of October, and that'll flow through to November. So as long as it's working, so we'll take a look at that, but that is designed to be able to flow through to the next month and do some of the calculations for you. It's also available on that website as PDF files. I know not everyone uses Excel, so it takes away some of the fun things it does, where it rolls things over for you and takes it to the next month. But you can use this template and put it in yourself. If you print it out after you've done your calculations, make yourself a copy, well, then all you gotta do is take these numbers for October and you put them in at the beginning of November. And you can do it that same way. So it still has value if you don't use Excel. We are working on an oyster farm inventory sheet. Same thing for the NAP requirements. I don't know if it's up there yet or no, not quite yet. It's a little trickier because the oyster growers, there's a lot more sorting between bags. It's moving stuff around a lot more by oyster size, and you've got multiple bag classes. So we keep running into problems. So Leslie had this idea of, well, let's just do the snapshot type thing, the thing you start the clam inventory worksheets with, and they can just kind of do that every month. And it'll still do a few calculations for you at the bottom, but if you're an oyster farmer and you're wanting to potentially look, this is a first step in that direction. We'd like to work with any oyster farmers who are online and want to try and develop something that's more automated. We would need help. We need to figure out how your business practices work and then kind of go from there and see if we can put it into Excel. So back to kind of your question of it not working. I want to put my information up here because all of these tools, all the ones Leslie went through, all the couple ones I went through, they're only valuable if they work for you folks, if they work for growers. So if it's not working, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to, dive into it and see if I can fix it. hopefully I can fix it. But also if there are certain parts of it where it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't fit your business model, we can sit down and try and figure out how to tweak it specifically to you and try and make it work for you. And, you know, problems you're having with it, there are probably 10 or 15 other growers who are having the same problem. So if we hear from you, we can fix problems for everybody. And then, while there are a lot of tools available, if you have ideas for things that might help, like from a business and economics and finance perspective, you know, things you do that take a lot of time, and you want to know if there's a way to automate those processes, let me know. We'll sit down. I mean, I can't promise anything, but we can give it a shot and see if we can come up with a tool that'll work for you. So in addition to the stuff already mentioned, we've got, there are a couple other options for shellfish farmers. Really, these things kind of fall into the, you know, agriculture talks a lot about precision ag. Well, this is kind of getting into that precision aquaculture. The Ocean Farmer app, RFID technologies and GIS packages. So there are other things out there, other options as well. Always good to look for, you know, that advantage and making your business more profitable and sustainable. And then I guess that's about it. We've got the,
Yeah, that's where you can go to the website if you want to take a snapshot of it, the website address. For everything that's being discussed, the presentations, and access to these different tools we just discussed. Thank you, Andrew and Natalie. But we've got one more presentation from Steve, who's going to talk a little bit about business structures and liabilities and how you may manage those risks. And we will wrap that up and be on time to get you out of here at 5. Here you go, Steve.
Yeah, this guy again. No, I promise I'll get you out of here on time. How many people are already incorporated, like LLC, S corp, that sort of thing? Most of you? So some of this will apply if we decide to change your structure. Some will apply if you're a sole proprietor or partnership, you want to incorporate it into a different structure. But what I do is I just have this step-by-step process, and then I'll talk about why maybe you want to consider some of these things, and then I'll talk about a little bit of liability insurance, and then wrap up with the Jones Act handout that you have. So a lot of just hitting the high points of these things with things to think about. So typically, if you want to take, let's say I'm a sole proprietor and I want to become an LLC, first thing I would do is a web search. Somebody else have that name. If it doesn't, then I go to Florida Department of State, do a search on their site, make sure nobody else has that name, and then I also do a domain search. You never know. I mean, I know most of you probably sell the wholesale, but what if you want a website someday and that website's available with your name on it? It's $20 a year. Maybe you decide to buy it in case you might need it someday. And then you decide, okay, what do I want to incorporate to? And just a brief, this is like a 3-hour program into 5 minutes. So in the past, we pretty much just for sole proprietorships, partnerships, and you had corporation as an option. These had some liability issues. Like if I was a sole proprietor, my business and myself, there's no distinguishable difference, right? If I run over somebody with my delivery truck, Steve, and Steve's Oysters or Steve's Clams, I'm both the business and the person, so I'm liable for that. If I have a partner, Leslie and Steve's Clams, and she runs over somebody, I'm just as liable for her actions as my own. And so what that caused was corporations where I become a stockholder of mine, or the owner and stockholder of my corporation, and if I run over somebody, I'm a stockholder, just like if you have stock in like Target or Walmart and they do something wrong, you're not liable, right? But this had some problems where I, as a stockholder and an owner, I would pay myself from that business and I'd have to deduct payroll taxes, things like that, 15% for payroll tax, 10% for income tax, and then any profits that I want to take out were 35%. Now it's 21, but you add those together, and we're still at quite a high rate if you want to get all that money to you first. So they invented the S corp, but that just that you didn't have those tiers of taxation. So you had the liability protection of corporation, but any profits would just flow to me, Steve, as a stockholder. There wasn't a tier where I had to pay payroll taxes, things like that. But the problem with the corporations, especially if you had assets in corporations, and this came up a lot when you want to transfer a business, when you have assets in it. Say I have the boats and the trucks and things like that, and I want to take those out and use them personally, or I want to transfer it to my children. Taking them out of a corporation is a taxable event, so it's not very flexible. There's a lot of rules, there's a lot of shareholder rules. If I want to separate management of my company, it has to be by share. So what it is we came up with this thing called an LLC where that gets away from a lot of those restrictions from a corporation where I can own only a certain few assets, but still manage the corporation or I'm sorry, LLC, or I can bring my kids in. They can have some of the assets, but I still control the asset, the operations, that sort of thing. You don't have taxable events by transferring assets in and out. And so you've got the liability protection of a corporation with the flexibility that we'd like to enjoy when we had a sole proprietorship or partnership. So that's kind of why you see a lot of LLCs. And finally, if you're having incorporated, whether for any reason or not, you can always start off as an LLC. And if your accountant says, I really think you ought to do something else, like go to an S corp, you can still do it. But you can't do that in reverse. You can't start it as S corp and say, I want to be an LLC tomorrow. A lot more difficult. And a C corp is very, very difficult to back up on that. So let's say I decide I'm going to get my name Steve's Clams LLC. I'm going to get an EIN number from the IRS, and then I'll file with the Department of State in Florida with that EIN number. So what I'm trying to say is you're trying to separate yourself from your business, your person from your business. So I'm not going to use my Social Security anymore as my EIN number. I'm going to get a new one for my business. So now I get that. That's what I register my business with the Department of State. I go back to make sure you go to FSA and give them the update. I'm now Steve's Clams LLC. And there are some payment limitation problems with LLCs and FSA, but I don't think we would run into that with clams. It's usually large row crop farmers. But then the next thing I would do is get a bank account under that EIN number. So I've got a separate business account from my personal account. It's under EIN number, my personal account's under my Social Security number. Again, we're keeping things separate because what we're trying to do, a lot of the reason why we form those LLCs, S corp or whatever, right? We're trying to protect ourselves, our personal assets and ourselves from liability, right? So the more we keep things separate, the better. Finally, business insurance, it's really your first line of defense. Your business, you don't want to lose your business assets, right? You don't want a lawsuit that comes in, it's like you lose, your business is gone. So you really don't want to have to rely on that business corporate protection. I mean, it's there if you need it, but you do have insurance options. I know everybody loves insurance, especially after talking crop insurance and all that. The one thing, and this might be, some of these things might be things to work on going forward. I used to manage a winery, or a couple of different wineries, and they were small businesses. There's only a couple thousand of them in the US. Likewise, for shellfish growers, there's probably around the same number, I'm guessing. So what happened was you could piecemeal these things out, right? Your liability, you get your product liability, your commercial property, your fire insurance, that sort of thing. But there were these bundled products. There are bundled products that exist now, like home-based business, small business, that sort of thing. Much cheaper rate. And especially when you're looking at product liability, a lot of times it's a much cheaper rate for that. But what I was heading for is a pooled insurance product specific to the industry. And so I found a small winery business insurance that covered all those things, product liability, general liability, fire, casualty, that sort of thing. It was not only cheaper, but it covered the risks better. And that's really what we're looking for. So one of the things that came through these meetings this week is like, insuring gear and things like that for your operations. Maybe there's a way that a group of clam farmers oyster farmers, or even both together, go to the insurance and say, hey, we have our own pool here. Will you insure us and give us a good rate? And they did that in Rhode Island for commercial fishing. And this fellow, Fred, we've had him out to talk about these things. So those are things to think about. It's not something that occur overnight. Finally, keeping that separation between business and personal. The records I'm talking about aren't inventory and all that. That's just business. It's mostly financial. Keep your personal finance and business finance separate, because if you intermingle them, and there does have to be a lawsuit, they can get through that corporate veil of protection, they call it. We don't want that. And these are just some odds and ends to throw in. There is an FDAX team card. It's funny, Leslie sent this to me and I put it in the slide. It's a sales tax exemption card now that you have to get. And I said, boy, in South Carolina, it was a train wreck. And I guess it's kind of headed that way a little bit. It's just the overwhelming number of people applying at one time. So keep those paper forms you still have with the vendor for now, but I would, as soon as the website's back up, I heard it was down, try to get this FDAX card, because eventually they're gonna go purely to that plastic card where you show it to the vendor and you buy. The last slide, not the most enjoyable one, but there was a hand up. This is really good news. The Jones Act, and I'm sure a lot of you heard the name, it basically opened up anybody with a vessel to almost unlimited liabilities for people getting hurt on a boat. Does not apply to aquaculture now, so that's something new. That's what that handout is. That's really good. Leslie dug that out. The other things to think about too, let's say, how do you pay the people on your boat? So if you pay them as W-2 employees, Florida doesn't have a workers' comp to buy into to protect employees in case there's an accident. And also, one of the problems that we run into, again, some of these things, we're gonna have to dig through and be like, let's get a categorization of aquaculture worker, which that handout defines. And let's get an experience rating for that aquaculture worker that makes that workers' comp affordable for you, if you pay them as W-2 employees. Now, if they're 1099 contractors on the boats, some states say that the contractor has to have their own insurance, but in Florida, that's only for construction. So you don't have to worry about that. But there is a policy, it's called a crew policy, that may fit, and it may actually be less expensive than workers' comp. And you could look at it, you could probably have it either or, no matter which way you pay your employees or contractors, that you could have that. It looked like to me, Leslie dug up private company that had it per person per year, and it didn't look that bad compared to some workers' comp I've seen. And that is it for that. Sorry if I talk like an auctioneer, but.
Any questions for Steve on any of that? Jones Act.
Is there a difference between longshoremen and Jones Act?
So Jones Act is the official name for longshore.
It is.
Yeah. So when we've talked about this in the past, because it was the East Coast Shellfish Growers Association that lobbied for this change for 10 years. And last year, the Shellfish Aquaculture Improvement Act was passed. You have a copy of it, very short, but basically it says no longer are aquaculture workers considered to be required under the Jones Act for workman's comp. It defers to your state workman's comp program, which Florida doesn't have one, so now it defers to private companies. We know that there's some limited companies.
So now does that make it where you can get that workers' comp on your boat guys and not? Can you actually get it? What I'm asking.
Well, you gotta find a private insurance carrier that'll do it, and I know of one, yeah.
Good question.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's insurance,
I've had
it's not free, yeah.
Well, I just wondered if the price came down at all, because it's totally unaffordable.
I talked,
Still expensive.
Yeah.
You gotta,
Yeah.
your risk.
Leslie, I talked to Red
Yes.
about why Florida, which has so much coast and so much water work,
Mhm.
why we don't copy what Alaska did for their deckhands, for their employees.
Yeah,
Why have we not done it? Why is University of Florida falling behind on that?
University of Florida's falling behind on what? Having workman's comp?
No, not workman's comp. The state of Alaska created a fisherman fund to
Oh,
do,
Yeah,
to
yeah, we
do.
talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about.
I mean, I talked to Red about it. He likes it. He thinks it should be done, but it stops right there.
Let me see if we've got the same folks. Next.
Well,
How do we get lays? Because workman's comp's expensive.
Yeah.
If we created a Florida fisherman fund, it wouldn't be. And the money's, the state can create the money.
Well, that's something that I think that should be pursued through a growers association, bring it to the forefront and see what kind of,
So you want the grower association to take the lead on it?
so how you get better response from universities or even state agencies is that it comes from you, and how to better come from you, but through an organized structure like your local growers association. That's my only suggestion.
Okay.
And I know you've brought it up before, but
I've brought it up for
speaking with-
years and I don't understand why. It's, yeah, I mean, the association's brought it up.
Do you do a lot? I apologize for my ignorance
No.
of how things work here, but do you combine your efforts with Farm Bureau a lot or not? I mean, there's so few aquaculture people in South Carolina, and the lobbying power of Farm Bureau is so large.
Yeah.
You tend to go with them and get it on their priority list.
Florida Farm Bureau's, they have an aquaculture advisory committee. Rose is now on it. Keith has been on it. So that is an avenue to pursue too, because they are a very strong lobbying program and they have interest in aquaculture, obviously. Other questions? Any questions from the two people that are still on Zoom? Maybe,
Who's on Zoom?
that they didn't identify.
Guess one, guess
themselves.
two.
And no questions from them? So, gonna wrap it up. Take out your phone again. All right, again, we have to go through this process. Takes a few minutes.